down. Touchdown. Basket.
Join us for the annual Walk and Wheel on Sunday, September 22nd to end ALS. We've high-fived thousands of participants, raised millions of dollars, and impacted hundreds of families. With your help, the good keeps growing. Register at walkandwheelnm.org. See you there. Join us.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mantel.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
Good morning. My name's Ryan Tamori. Welcome to the Morning Howl, part of the Pit Press New Mexico Alumni Media collection of shows. Week 3, college football is here. I'm amped, like Dave Chappelle. A lot of good matchups today. I'm looking forward to Colorado State. But obviously, we are here mostly to talk about UNM finally playing another game after a week off. They are at Auburn, an SEC opponent. Game is on ESPN2 at 5:30 local time, Mountain Time. You can catch the game on ESPN2. Did I say that? And Lobo Radio Network. Don Trillmore, Rob Portnoy in the call, Ned James, JJ Buck pregame show. Very interesting matchup with Auburn, and I kind of like UNM's chances today. So if you listen to the show, you're probably spitting out your coffee. Listen to me say that. A lot to get to today. Well, Jacob and I will have our picks. We'll do that now because we've got some games at 10 o'clock, and then we'll get into whatever the 6-pack is, whatever the hell's going on there with conference realignment, which I hate. But to the panel, missing Ed Nunez today. He's calling a game. He's the voice of Western New Mexico. He's calling a game down there. My business partner in this endeavor, Mr. Eric Moulton. Eric, how you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm good, Ryan. Good morning, guys. I kind of side with you. I think UNM has a decent shot today, and we'll get into that and other Mountain West and Pac-6 topics.
And all the way from the Bay Area, he is a 2-time offensive state lineman for San Juan Mendoza and the St. Pius Sardines, and played basketball for Damian Segura. He's all the way from the Bay Area, which don't play. Mr. Richard Thompson. Rick, how you doing?
Gentlemen, good morning. I'm doing well. It's a bright and sunny day, getting ready to go to a ballet class here and see some dancing, so that'll be fun, but I'll come home in time for the football game, so happy to talk some football here first.
Well, thank God. All right, and you can follow him at SportsGapper on Twitter, a lineage of sports gambling knowledge, baseball prospects, college basketball. His name's Jacob Neff. Jake, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, man. Ready to watch some football. Got a big sports day. Obviously, college football, UFC at the Sphere tonight. Canelo fights tonight. So lots of sports today. So super excited.
Perfect. We will get into our picks because we've got some games that are at 10. Ben Wysong, former UNM linebacker, Lobo back, will be joining us at roughly 10 o'clock our time, and we'll talk to him a little bit before, during the game's kickoff. I'm going to go to the comments real quick. Ryan Chill, Brown Sugar, Ian Freeze. All right, to the picks, and we will start with Neff, and these are what he likes today. West Virginia's a backyard brawl. They hate each other. Lot of rivalry games today. Eric and I were talking about this morning. I miss the fact that the Civil War and the Apple Cup are over Thanksgiving weekend, but it's the new world we live in. Jake, I will start here with West Virginia and Pitt. You like West Virginia -1. The game's in Pittsburgh, right?
It sure is, yeah. I think West Virginia had a bad start to the season, obviously against Penn State. I thought that they had a chance to even win that game outright. They didn't play that great. They bounced back last week. Pitt really struggled to beat Cincinnati last week. I don't think Cincinnati's that good of a team. I think West Virginia, as long as they can run the ball today on Pitt, which they should be able to because Cincinnati did pretty well last week, and then they got away from it, which is why they lost that game. I think West Virginia at relatively a pick'em here is the better team. So I'm going with West Virginia in the rivalry game. It's probably going to be a close game, but in the end, I think West Virginia pulls it out. As long as their defense doesn't give up any explosive pass plays, that's their weakness. As we saw in the Penn State game, I think that they cover this number. They'll win the game outright. So I like West Virginia -1 in this one.
And you're not really that high on Drew Aller and James Franklin at Penn State either, right?
I'm not. I mean, you already saw they got a scare from Bowling Green the next week after that, which just goes to show that I think West Virginia just played a really bad game. And then it was weird too. That game was was definitely a weird situation where it was delayed for almost 2 hours. It was just, you don't want to see that when you bet a game. But that they proved what I thought. I don't think they're as strong as we think they are. I mean, letting Bowling Green stick around and almost, beating them at home goes to show that I think Penn State is a little bit of susceptible, across the season. So yeah, not too high on them. And I think West Virginia is a little bit of an underrated team here, and that this number isn't big enough. I thought it would be somewhere around -3. So at -1, I'm definitely going to take it.
To the Pacific Northwest, and they are actually not playing this game in Pullman or on the University of Washington campus, not on the Puget Sound. They're playing it at Lumen Field, which is home of the Seattle Seahawks. I loved when Colorado and Colorado State used to play in Denver at Mile High 2.0. You like Washington -5, Neff, why?
Yeah, so last week, this was my only win. I went 1-2 last week, 4-4 on the season now. But I had Washington State last week against Texas Tech. It was probably my favorite bet. Last week, they demolished them at a pick'em. This is a different situation. I think Washington State, I fear that if they get ahead in the game, if they get behind in this game, I know that they take some shots downfield and they like to pass, but the completion percentage for Washington State has been pretty minimal this year. And Washington obviously got Jed Fish going over there. They have a lot of good transfers. I think their offense is clicking. It's a rivalry game, which scares me giving -5 in this case, but I think Washington should be able to win this game by a touchdown at least. They have the more explosive offense. I like their special teams a little more in this game as well. That's another key factor to it. I don't know if you watched the Washington State game, but Washington State, their kicker missed an extra point. He also missed a field goal in that game. So for me, when you have a special teams advantage in college, that plays into it as well, because we know how inconsistent kickers are in college football. It's a mess half the time. So I think Washington has the advantage there. I think their offense is better. And I just think that, with the way that Washington State plays, very minimal with their shots downfield. They like to pass the ball for sure, but a lot of it is short passes. And so if you get down in that game, not a great formula to come back. But I just trust Jed Fish, and that team already, Jed Fisher, that team already looks like it's clicking. So, we saw what he did with Arizona. I'm going with Washington in this game at -5.
I think Arizona is missing him. And finally, before we get to your lock of the week, you like BC +16. BC's kind of a surprise, as is FSU stinking it up. They're in SEC territory because, yes, when I think of the Southeastern Conference, I think of Missouri. But you like them at +16.
Yeah, so this number actually went way down. This is what I sent to this is what I got him at I think Friday when I sent over the picks for this week. I think it's down to like 14 and a half. And that's the effect of Bill O'Brien being at Boston College now. He's already got this team turned around. I'm actually a pretty big fan of Castellanos, their quarterback. I think that he's somebody that doesn't turn the ball over. He's a dual threat. And if we look at Missouri and the games that they've played so far, this is going to be their first big test, but I haven't really been impressed with how they've played to start the season at all. So if you're giving me almost 17 with Boston College, I think they do enough here. Their defense is scrappy. The offense isn't turning the ball over, and those are keys to sticking around, on the road. So I'm going to go with Boston College in this game, and I think Bill O'Brien's already got something cooking over there, and I think that they stick within this game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's close late and they give Missouri a big scare today. So I think getting 16 is an absolute gift in this game.
Action Network consensus has it down to 14. I'm a big Brady Cook and Luther Burden the third guy, so I think next to, Noah Fafita and McMillan really haven't shown much since the UNM game. But probably one of the better quarterback wide receiver tandems in the country. To your lock of the day, and an offensive juggernaut in Iowa. There's a Twitter that says what sucks today, and it's Iowa, and it's just a picture of Iowa. But I don't know. I like Kirk Ferentz, McNamara. They choked last week against Iowa State. That was rat shit. You like Troy plus 23? Why?
Yeah, this is way too many points for an offensively challenged team. I mean, Troy has a pretty good defense, and I think the key number here is Troy getting to 10. If Troy literally scores 10 points in this game, I don't see how Iowa puts up any more than 28 in this game. So for me, you just need Troy to probably get 10 points in this game, and you're covering. We saw what Iowa did last week, totally choked that game away. In the first half of their first game, they were up 10-0 against an FCS school. They blew them out in the second half. But this team it's the same old story with this team every year. It's very offensively challenged and a great defense, right? So as long as Troy doesn't make any, big turnovers in this game deep in their own territory, and they just play the game out how it is, I don't see how Iowa ever deserves to be almost 3 touchdown and a field goal favorite in a game, even at home. They just don't put together offensive drives. They shoot themselves in the foot. They make stupid mistakes. We saw that last week. They had no business losing that game. However, giving me this number against Iowa, I'm going to take it every time. So this is my lock of the week. This is my favorite bet of the week. Like I said, let's just get Troy to 10 points, and I think we're in the clear here.
I'm going to take that with you. I've not done it. All right. We are going to my picks. I'm very weird today. I have Mountain West teams and SEC teams. I love Dion. They suck, though. They are just absolutely horrendous. This game is in Fart Collins. After last year, I think there's revenge factor. Not only do I think CSU covers tonight, I think it's fluctuated between 6.5, 7.5, 7. I like Colorado plus 7.5. Nevada and Jeff Cote, what they've done there, former Texas defensive coordinator. Nevada's looked tough. They should have beaten SMU. SMU laid a big fat egg last Friday night against BYU. BYU looks pretty good. What I've seen out of Michigan and PJ Fleck, they're not really rowing the boat there very well. Plus 17.5. Ole Miss, Wake Forest. I don't know what to expect out of Wake Forest, but Jacob, more so than and I like Jackson Dart, aka Jackson Fart. Everything rhymes with fart on this segment. I don't know. I think 21 is a bit too low. I'll go with Ole Miss there. I think they're rolling, and I think probably right now Jackson Dart is a Heisman Trophy finalist. Nephew took him to win the Heisman. And before I move on to my lock of the week, we both took UNLV last night, which was a huge win for that program. I know it was Kansas. Lance Leopold has kind of gotten Kansas to turn the tide there. Jalen Daniels didn't look so hot. Devin Neal is a phenomenal running back. He is probably a third-round draft pick with the way running backs are drafted. But UNLV is now in the driver's seat. They get a pretty good Syracuse team at home, I think in a few weeks or next week. Obviously, October, I think 24th is Boise State at UNLV at Allegiant Stadium. I'm super high on UNLV, and it has proved me correct. My lock of the week, and let's see if you guys can hear it, for no other reason, is for Hootie, because I love Hootie and the Blowfish. South Carolina plus 7. Darius Rucker went to South Carolina. They formed in Columbia. What I've seen out of South Carolina, the quarterback, and I just closed it down. I had the name. Lenora Sellers, Raheem Sanders. They've got Nick Harbor, who's qualified for the Olympics. Their defense looked good against Kentucky. Neff and I thought that Kentucky should have beaten South Carolina. They look like dog shit against Old Dominion, but I think what Beamer's done there, Shane Beamer's done there. I think it's a little bit better. The crowd is going to be ruckus. I like Newsmeyer for LSU. I think that USC game was an anomaly, but I think 7 is a bit too much. I think it has been up as high as 7.5. So I'll take that. I just think Columbia, that stadium is going to be rocking. So those are our picks for the day. And then I just want to go to the board real quick before we talk about the Pac-6, because yes, John Romero, I have to correct you. Let's get howling. Need to take my mind off Mountain West poaching. Diego Pavia going to Georgia Tail today. I guess kick Georgia Tail today. And then you corrected it. They do not play Georgia. They play Georgia Southern. So there we go with that. The Pac-12, if you haven't heard, has poached Mountain West schools to join Oregon State and Washington State, as I guess the Pac-12 does fully still exist. I know with the two it does. Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State have joined the conference and will in 2026. And I have to look at this. It leaves out, obviously, UNM, UNLV, which UNLV boggles my mind. San Jose State, Wyoming, Air Force, Hawaii with football. They're looking at adding Memphis and Tulane, and then maybe Cal and Stanford when I don't know. I don't understand it. I know I host the show and the business aspect of it. I enjoy the history of things. My head hurts. And as much as I love college athletics, it's really starting to grind my gears. It's still regionally, and there has been no thought put into, and it's been said, this is not original. I'm not original in saying this. There is no thought put into the other programs, teams in other sports traveling. And as I've jokingly said, yes, when I think of ACC football or Big Ten football, I think of UCLA at Rutgers. I mean, to go play for an hour and to travel for 4 or 5 hours is bonkers to me. I can understand where you go to a tournament, you play 3 different teams, but again, the education aspect is thrown out, and I know nobody's going to hear me say that PC, but I think it sucks for everybody involved. Who I will go to on the subject, because he's more interested in than I am, is Eric. Eric, your thoughts on Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State joining the 6-pack?
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, right? I think I shared with the group this morning, and we'll probably end up retweeting it later today, but there was a USA Today article that was written by Dan Wolkin, a national writer, that kind of covered the Pac-6 and some of the Mountain West members that end up leaving. He was having a hard time understanding what the point of it all is. I think in theory, moving to the Pac-12 was going to give these programs a chance to get into the college football playoff, and with the old brand name of the Pac-12 and the relevancy there was a step up. But when you look at the landscape of things, it's basically still a mid-major. Not my opinion. Well, my opinion is kind of just agreeing with what he was writing about in the article, because if you look at the programs focusing primarily on football, that's kind of what it is. It's basically just like a Mountain West 2.0, and with the addition of maybe Cal or Stanford might elevate that a little bit. But when you're thinking about adding Memphis and Tulane, you're still kind of in the middle of the pack, mid-major. This definitely doesn't elevate them into the P5 status, I don't think. So I think with the key goal for them here is to go after more of the TV revenue and securing a long-term deal with broadcasting rights. But in that article, it also alludes to that and the fact that there's not a whole lot to go after there because there's not much of an uplift. So he mentioned that the TV revenue deal at best would be marginal. I think last year the Mountain West had distributed just under $80 million as a conference to all of its members, which came down to between $5 or $7 million per institution. And the Pac-12 probably wouldn't do a whole lot more than that. So I don't really see the point of it all. All I know is I'm a big college basketball fan, and with the shakeup and realignment of everything, I don't think much consideration has been given to college basketball, and it basically ripped apart the Mountain West, and which is one kind of big staple that the Mountain West kind of rolled in. They got 6 teams into the NCAA tournament last year, where the Pac-12 got 4. So it kind of ripped that apart and ripped it to shreds when in reality, in hopes of the Pac-12 being able to secure a more lucrative TV revenue deal. And to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless they start adding some bigger schools. But it's really hard to say what that looks like. I just know that we'll get into it a little bit more down this segment. I know Rick has some thoughts on it too, but it doesn't leave New Mexico in a really good spot. I don't think the football has not been real competitive, and that's kind of the driving force behind all of this, and what is driving college realignment. And hopefully, the university, the state can get behind it and try to inject some new money to try to help elevate that football program into some better categories of relevance to help give them a boost and give them a better shot of going somewhere. Or this is going to have some long term negative impacts on the athletic department in a whole, particularly basketball, because the Mountain West is what they kind of relied on. It was a lot of big conference rivalries. It also helped boosted their strength of schedule. A lot of the in-conference play, the matchups with San Diego State, Colorado State, UNLV, Boise State, and a lot of that after the 2026 season is going to be real watered down. So having to retain players, coaches, things of that nature, it's gonna be hard for UNM to stay relevant. We can go into some more statistics and just stuff that we're looking at. I came across another article with really what I think the athletic department personnel, members, school presidents, conference leadership people are actually looking at when they're analyzing different programs around the country and what they bring to the table. And I know that the Pac-6 is only at 6 members now. They need to get to 8 to become a full-blown FBS member and compete in postseason play, and they're looking at adding more. So I think that kind of bodes more questions on who are they looking at and why. And I think we have kind of a structure that we can show here that might help explain that a little bit. But before we get into that, I think Rick might have some thoughts or his own opinions on the realignment piece.
Yeah, lots of thoughts. I guess it starts at the top with will this new conference have power status? Will it get an automatic invite? And I think that all depends on what you're talking about, right? What other teams will be added? Will it be a Memphis, or will they dip into the FCS waters with a Montana State or North Dakota State, or will they look at a UTEP or Idaho or even someone like a North Texas or Rice? There's a lot of rumors and speculation, but what it all comes down to, it looks like, is football success. And one thing I think we have to look at is this is going to be a multi-tiered approach from the Pac-12. I think this was just the core teams getting in. I think the teams that come in at the second level here are going to get partial revenue share and not come in at the same level as these first teams. That's just my guess. Looking at the response from Gloria Nevarez, who you guys just interviewed a few weeks ago and acted like she had no idea this was coming. She's saying that the Pac-12 is going to pay out all these fees and all these expenses. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how the hell does the Pac-12 have any money? Oh, well, they just got paid out last year. These two teams that were remaining had all the money from the other teams that just got bought out by the other conferences. So they got a lot of money to spend. They got a lot of money to waste on these Mountain West teams. It sounds like Nevarez is going to take that money and probably try to rebuild the Mountain West and attract some new teams there with these new funds they got. So it's going to be ever changing. I think as a Lobo fan myself, we have to be realistic and realize even if we were to pull off a miracle and make a bowl game the next 2 years, we're still not going to get invited to this new conference as bad as we wanted. And as much as we think that's a possibility, it's not going to happen in my eyes, regardless of how good football does, just because of the recent history they've had. So I think we'll get more into the breakdown of why this is all happening on Eric's slides. But as a Lobo fan, it's pretty bleak at this point when we don't have a leader right now in the athletic department that I'm aware of, and really muddling through murky waters here the next 2 years.
I will let Eric show the slides, and I'll also probably get Jacob's opinion on it. am probably negative Nancy here. I think it's funny because the Pac-12 isn't what the Pac-12 is. I think of USC, I think of Oregon, I think of Washington, I think of, Jake Plummer and ASU playing in the Rose Bowl, and I know, ASU is not prominent, and I think played in that game once. I don't think Arizona ever got there. Those are the things I think of. I know San Diego State had wanted to be in that conference for years. It's not what it used to be. Obviously, the Rose Bowl is a quarterfinal game. They've done that to keep it on January 1st, a kind of a tradition in that. I think there's a possibility that if the Mountain West stays intact and UNM doesn't leave, they might, look at teams like Montana State, maybe Weber State, make that jump out of the Big Sky. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I think this is UNM and what this town, how it does not support the football team. And again, you have to give me a reason to go. And I'm stealing that from Jeff Symbieta. It's true. I mean, people were, you can't get into this small stadium, and people were bitching and moaning about NMSU and the parking in the stadium last year. People weren't getting into the first and second quarter, but it's, the most New Mexican thing ever. When you watch SEC games, people are in their seats like half an hour before the game starts. Albuquerque is so used to, I can get there in 10 minutes and I can walk right in. And that hasn't been the case with how difficult it's been to get into the stadium. The lack of success on the football field since Rocky Long was fired, I think, has killed this athletic department. Jacob, I just wanted your thoughts, and then I wanted to get to Eric and the slides he's going to show and why UNM has been left behind. And I'll say it again, 3 Fiesta Bowl wins trumps, no pun intended, a Sweet 16 appearance that this town wants so badly.
Yeah, I think we're finding maybe why we're getting left out of these conferences, and it's because of the unbalanced approach of our sports, right? I mean, we have a lot to offer from the basketball perspective. We do, but when you look at the football perspective and how much revenue that brings in for these conferences, due to tickets, due to exposure, due to whatever the case is, I don't want to say that we've been a little too lenient on the coaches that we've had here, but maybe that's part of it. We gave a lot of time to some of these coaches that weren't successful, just hoping that it would eventually gel together, and it never did. I think one thing that we have to look at from this perspective now is this probably doesn't bode well for keeping Patino. This probably doesn't bode well for, keeping players around. And that's going to be the thing that they're going to have a challenge. I mean, from this perspective right now, you have to look at it and go, they're probably the favorites to win the Mountain West in basketball when you start looking at who's left and who's there. Which means that there's a potential for automatic bids. But I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a 1-bid conference for sure now. There's no doubt about it. So you're going to, all the games that you schedule, all the games that you deal with, I mean, all those, no matter who they bring into this conference, the strength of schedule is going to decrease so bad that it's basically going to be a 1-bid conference, and you're going to have to win the Mountain West Conference tournament to get in from that perspective. And when you start looking at that, is that going to keep around Patino? Is that going to keep around players like Dent? Is that going to keep around players? We already see that we're losing players before that. I think we're going to start facing that challenge again. But it just goes back to what we've said. I thought this was the worst thing for college sports when it happened. Obviously, it's great for them revenue-wise, but like you just said, when UCLA has to travel in an extraordinary amount of miles every year to play these games, the schools are just looking at the money aspect of it, because there's going to be times where UCLA has to travel 5 hours for a game that week, and they're going to lose games like that eventually, and it's going to hurt their chances at being in the in the college football picture. And when we look at it, it just comes down to money now. And unfortunately, UNM is not in a spot to bring that type of revenue to a conference. And so this is where it leads us. I think it's getting ridiculous. We're going to have like 20 team conferences soon. It's ruining the aspect of playing everybody in your conference and the rivalries that come with it. But here we are, and now we have big moves to make to either bring some teams into this conference or try and figure out how to join another one. But as you guys said already, I think that if UNM was attractive to the Big 12, they would have been part of the initial discussions, and it sounds like there was none. When you watch, when you look at some of the comments that have came out about it. So yeah, it's ever evolving, and I'm not sure what to think at this point, but they've got some work to do for sure.
Yeah. Also, before I go to Eric.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before I go to Eric, wait, Eric. Yeah, no, Brett Newberry, UTEP, an option for the Mountain West Conference. Paul Bonilla, Bing in UTEP. Nobody uses Bing. I didn't think of that, and I had said this week to other people not on the show, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. NMSU and UTEP to the Mountain West, even though, UTEP football looked pretty bad. That's a phenomenal stadium. Why is ABQ viewed as a loser related to a TV market? It's actually a top 50 market. I just don't think people Santa Fe, the area, I forgot what it's called. I worked in TV for 13 months, and it was, anyway, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and the rest of the country, obviously El Paso, Las Cruces is in that TV market. It's a top 50 market. It's weird to me though. People think that the rest of the country think that Albuquerque is the Roadrunner and that is the Coyote chasing the Roadrunner. It's that. Hold on there. Ryan said many times that Danny should have gotten one more year. He had things right on track, baby. I love Danny. I do think he should have gotten another year. I understand why Eddie Nunez and Dave Williams didn't give him another year. They led the team. They led the nation in penalties, and he should have won for 2 against Utah State. Eric, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just on. I had a second thought after Jake stopped talking, with the conference realignment and how it's just going to continue to evolve. And I think one idea that should be looked at and really considered is just creating this conference realignment, these major conferences, these power conferences, and just keep it for football, but let all the other sports and basketball kind of remain in what the conferences already kind of had built. And I don't know if they'll ever go down that road with it, but I think it's a good idea because there's a lot of solidified rivalry games in the region that these schools and fan bases and student populations really are geared up for. So basically all of that got shipped away by this conference realignment agenda of really what was their only focus was football. But I will use that.
I want to say this real quick. Fort Collins over ABQ TV market. The Denver TV market is Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, and Greeley. So you have Denver.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and Albuquerque is a top 50 TV market. But I'll use that as a segue kind of into these slides and what we were able to just find. I'll preface it by saying that the TV market isn't the only thing these athletic directors and conference leaders are considering when looking at adding potential schools. It's going to be a combination of multiple different factors, and we'll start with this. But essentially, let me remove this. I found this website. It's called Athletic Director U, which is a culmination of athletic directors votes. There was a study put out by this website, by this group of getting collection of opinions and votes from athletic directors who are currently seating or people that are actually on leadership boards around the country. And they actually conducted one specific study on the Mountain West in particular. And basically the results of all those studies, which is basically the combination of questions like athletic facilities relative to Mountain West conference peers, the perceptions about the ability to generate donations, corporate sponsorships, perceptions about institutional leadership, like the presidents, the trustees, quality of the institutional brand, the potential for men's basketball and football success, and then the potential to become a Power Five, and like quality of life. Like if all things were equal, quality of life of where the schools sit geographically, cost of living, schools, culture, all kinds of things like that. You can't just factor in the fact that football is successful and it drives revenue, because there's a lot more that goes into it and a lot more than driving viewership. So, stripping the layers of the onion back just based off of the rankings, here's what else that study revealed. Potential Power Five for these schools. If you look at the top three schools in this ranking, Boise State, San Diego State, and Colorado State, those are the three schools that were plucked to go to the Pac-12, or the Pac-6, I should say. I think Fresno State is down at 7, but I think they really based their opinion strictly on the success of the football program, because when you factor in other things like the strength of academics, Fresno State is not a very highly ranked institution when it comes to academics. I think they're more towards the bottom of the tier around the country. But look where UNM sits at number 9. Overall, UNM is at number 10. And then here are some of the things that they were also looking at, the power index. So when you start factoring in different things like facilities, donor support, leadership alignment, brand perception, football and men's basketball success, you can see where I highlighted UNM there. They're kind of near the bottom tier of the Mountain West, outside of men's basketball success, with their sitting at number 3. So Rick did mention that, and this kind of validates it. Even though they have a really strong basketball program, outside of the basketball program, it's just an unbalanced approach, and UNM struggles in a lot of different areas. So I know that there had been a lot of tweets going out after the news had broke, and one of the folks that we had join our show a while back, McKinsey, with Abrazo Homes, he's actually on the board for the 505 Sports Venture. I don't know if he's watching now, but he alluded to the fact that this is the time that if New Mexico as a state, from a government approach, wants to help elevate a public institution like UNM, they really have to consider investing more money into athletics and uplifting some of these areas that aren't so strong at UNM, like brand perception, facilities, donor support. People have to get involved, and overall as a state, we have to help develop the brand that UNM represents, not just the basketball program. I think the athletic department for too long has relied on men's basketball to carry the torch in driving revenue, where it's kind of unprecedented, because you look at other athletic department institutions around the country, football is the revenue driver. Football is carrying all the other sports, and it's the complete opposite here. So that model is definitely holding New Mexico back from being able to take the next step, or even being considered in going to another conference. Or if you're looking at trying to rebuild the Mountain West with all that influx of, what is it, $111 million, which would be owed by the buyouts and the exit fees and everything like that. It's all really hard to piece together, but I think from a conference perception like the Pac-12, that those leaders, the current 4 members, those presidents and those athletic directors, these are the things that they're evaluating, and they're not just looking at success on the field. It's a lot of other things. what are adding these other institutions? What do their brands bring to our brand as a conference? Because all of it has to be sellable for a TV market. So I thought it was all really interesting. And um, my personal opinion, I thought it was kind of sad to see UNM kind of towards the bottom tier of all these power indexes and rankings, but it is the reality that we're currently living. So hopefully we find a way to support the programs and put the university kind of in a better situation. But this is the reality, and this is what we have to do to go from here.
And for all the people that are already donating to both the NIL and to the Lobo Club, and in 2 years, if the Lobos are in this much weaker conference, are people going to be as enthusiastic about donating to a conference that's seen as even lower than what it once was? If they're not, moving up in football with those 2 years, is there going to even be as many donations coming into 505 Sports Ventures that they're getting today? That's my fear. Also, on top of not getting enough as it is right now, it could get less in the future.
And something else I was going to state too is like, we've been on TV now for the first couple games. But when we were on TV for the first game, and this could just be a coincidence, but when they come back from commercials and stuff, usually they show the crowd, right? The people. I didn't see very much of that when they had the game on from Montana State, right? And I think there's a reason for that, because they don't want to show that there's a nationally televised game with 75% of the seats open. You know what I mean? And that's a big part of it. And if we look at our football stadium and the facility as a whole, I mean, you can see why. I mean, Ryan, you've been to Boise State, you've been to these other schools. I mean, it's laughable when you look at that football stadium compared to some of these other schools, right? And so, that ultimately is coming back and hurting us. We've put all of our money into a basketball facility and basketball in general, and now we're getting punished for not being a balanced program. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And there's going to have to be some switching around, or some balancedness to come into this, or we're going to stick at where we're at. And that slide was really cool. I mean, it was really eye-opening to see how we're rated across the board, where we think so highly of like our facility of basketball and whatever not. Other people have the total opposite perspective of, everything else besides basketball at UNM. So.
Yeah, I want to bring up or just address a question real quick. This UNM has a better athletic department compared to CSU, and they have a better stadium football team. Yeah, I think the on-field product at CSU is a lot better, but that's not the only thing being considered. When you look at an athletic department budget overall, UNM had a balanced budget. Yes, I think Eddie Nunez did a decent job of balancing a budget because the last 10 years they were in the red. But they operated with $44 million. Was it $44 million? That's what the fact. Yeah, I think that was the number. $44 million was the athletic budget compared to Colorado State, which was $61 million. So Colorado State is investing more, $21 million more than UNM is in their athletics department. And when you look at that from like another conference like a Pac-12, we want to bring in institutions that are willing to invest more money into the development and uplifting their athletic programs. We don't want an athletic program that's just kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel to get by, which is what UNM was or is doing, because they were trying to just operate more to balance budget. But they want programs that are elevating themselves, that are putting themselves in more competitive situations to attract sponsorship money. Colorado State put in a ton of money to build a brand new football stadium in Fort Collins, which is super nice. I mean, I don't think UNM and University Stadium even comes close to comparing to something like that. So when you compare all the different factors, it's Colorado State is actually light years ahead of where New Mexico's at.
I want to bring this up too. The New Mexico legislature needs to fund. Thank you, Brett Newberry. fund major upgrades to the football stadium. Unfortunately, the legislator does not adequately fund our highways. Well, I mean, I would hope our highways are better than our football stadium. But if you're talking about it goes down this rabbit hole, think about what New Mexico State alumni and NMSU fan thinks. They think they are, and they might be, they are truly little brother, and they're left out of all of this. One of the conversations that Jeff and JJ had was if you redo the football stadium, where does UNM play? Rick, I saw you put your finger up.
Oh, sorry, I don't have an answer for that. I just want a one-word answer from all of you on if Commissioner Navarez needs to be evaluated on her job, if her job should be in question now as commissioner of the Mountain West Conference.
That's a tough one, Rick. I think with the buyout that was
that's not a one-word
negotiated
answer.
into those contracts. Well,
I
my
didn't want
answer
to
is no.
take a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm going to say no. But I mean, with those schools leaving, the Mountain West is left over with $115 million to do with to use to rebuild. Right? I think it was there for a reason, for protection. But Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Fresno all thought differently. They thought that there's going to be more potential money down the road than what they would have to spend on a buyout or an exit fee, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they believe it.
I'm going to tell this story again. In our day job, Jacob and I's coworker, our buddy Eddie, who lives in Boise. When I went up to the game last November, UNM at Boise State, they fired Andy Avalos for covering the spread. That's how much. I mean, it's a different mentality there. It's a football city. It's a football university. When I got off the plane, we went and got food because I was like, I want to go see the university. I want to see the football stadium. And we drove into Boise State's campus, and our buddy Eddie pointed at everything. And it wasn't just athletics. It was education. And he goes, Chris Peterson paid for this. Chris Peterson paid for that. Chris Peterson paid for this. Once again, it would be, don't think I'm knocking advancing in the NCAA tournament. You are talking to probably four guys and maybe Jacobs and I, at least me the last couple of years, on how much I love the NCAA tournament in college basketball. But once again, getting to the Fiesta Bowl and winning 3 times and being 3-0 in a Fiesta Bowl has elevated not only Boise State's athletic department, but the university as a whole. What that does for you is far superior than a Sweet 16 appearance or even an Elite 8 appearance. Think about UConn. They are on the verge of attempting to three-peat. And because their football program sucks, and they've had some success. I mean, I think Dan Orlovsky, they've been to a Fiesta Bowl when the Big East was still relevant during the BCS era. People don't know what to do with them because they're one of 3 independents. It's UMass, them, and Notre Dame. And it's hurt Notre Dame being an independent. They should just join the Big Ten. I mean, for the most part, they are in the Big Ten, at least football-wise. It has, I mean, UConn, they're like, okay, are they going to join the Big 12? I don't know. And if Dan Hurley were to leave, I mean, it's what does that program become? I mean, I think UConn will always be a staple. I think they're now a blue blood. They're in that 5. They've won 5 titles in 25 years. Again, I understand we love basketball in this state, and we love it. I'm still kind of wanting to see what UNM will do in conference play. And if UNM can beat conference opponents this year after this Auburn game, if they can figure out how to beat Fresno State and Wyoming, and they avoid Boise State and UNLV, which is huge. And we're having Ben Weissong on here in a few minutes. We've already talked to him about that, but it's, I lost my train of thought there. I just think, football, it's so weird in this state. I don't understand it. And I mean, Indiana's redone their stadium. They're a basketball, state. Look at Kentucky. You put on a Kentucky game, they've stunk for years, and people show up. It's the SEC. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be joined by Ben Wysong. He is in the loveliest village in the plains, or on the plains. I forgot the nickname. He's in Auburn, Alabama. And
hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Paul, how you doing? All right, we'll be right back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Join us for the annual Walk and Wheel on Sunday, September 22nd to end ALS. We've high-fived thousands of participants, raised millions of dollars, and impacted hundreds of families. With your help, the good keeps growing. Register at walkandwheelnm.org. See you there.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Howl, part of the Pit Press Network. We will get to Ben Wysong in a bit. He's in the loveliest village on the plains, and I hope he's walked up to somebody and said,
"Roll down Tide."
I want to start here, and Ben, I know you played for the football program. I'm sorry, I just got to do a little bit of history here. I got to share my screen. If you happen to watch football on Thursday night, South Alabama helped out UNM. South Alabama beat Northwestern State, the Northwestern State Demons, 87-10. South Alabama. This is from CBS Sports. I love this. I love who wrote this, or if it was just a bot. South Alabama blasted Northwestern State 87-10 as the Jaguars scored the most points by an FCS team since 1991 when Fresno State beat UNM 94-17, and it's unsurprisingly both a South Alabama record and a Sun Belt record. So I will start there. All right, to greener pastures. No, there we go. Okay, it's fun to produce a show by yourself. All right. We are joined by a former linebacker, former Lobo back, and he is in Auburn, Greenbow, Alabama. He's in Auburn, Alabama.
Alabama.
His name is Ben White, Greenbow, Alabama. His name is the war in Viet fucking Nam. We are joined by Ben Whitesong. Ben, how was your trip to the South?
Well, it's definitely a lot better than the football teams, I'll tell you that much. So, the weather has actually been holding up here pretty good. So it hasn't completely started raining just yet, but
right.
What's that?
Are you in Birmingham or Montgomery?
No, so we're actually in Montgomery. So we flew into Birmingham just because flights were a lot cheaper. But so we made our way down. We did a little tour stuff yesterday on the way down. We went over to Talladega, which I'm telling you, that track is impressive, man. That place is, I mean, like the guy that was giving us the tour, he's like, you're in hillbilly heaven here when it comes to Talladega. So, but so we, so that was pretty fun. Yeah, because we were talking with him because I guess he had a son that played baseball at Auburn. So he's like, you guys are about to have yourselves a good time. So he's, telling us like, hey, if you guys are going to play Auburn, now's the good time to do it because they got some controversy stuff going on with their QB position. So, but so we're here in Montgomery.
And we will get into that. I don't know what you can tell. It was on social media. I'm going to read partial of the text that you sent to me because it was on social media, and I appreciate for the update. Start calling you Adam Schefter. Team tried to land twice in Montgomery, but couldn't due to weather, so they diverted to Mobile. Landed in Mobile, but couldn't get gas for the plane to come back. So now they have to bus 2.5 hours to Montgomery. For some reason, they have to switch buses halfway between Mobile and Montgomery. Lots of pissed off players and coaches. LOL. I probably shouldn't have read that last part. But then they showed the South Alabama buses, which I believe is in Mobile. They were shuttling them up. I'm sure I'm going to gather you probably talked to Luke and Evan, but as a football player, and I know Jacob played football, which Rick was on, and you have a routine on game day, regardless of what time you're playing. Is that thrown out of whack?
I mean, it can be. I was telling, because I was talking with Adam and Beth, it kind of reminds me of the year that we, I was not on this trip, but hearing it from the other guys when we had to go play at Wyoming, where they were circling Denver for 2 hours, and then they didn't get to the hotel like 4 a.m, and then they bust up for the 1 o'clock game, and I mean, they still pulled off a win. So kind of reminds me of something like that, and hopefully it's, granted, Wyoming and Auburn are two completely different teams, but hopefully this is something that these guys can just overcome and go into and just still put up a good fight. So, but yeah, you're definitely right when it comes to the whole routine, because every week for us, we had our itinerary. You are stuck to the itinerary. This is how it's going to go. So it's gonna be interesting to see these guys' mentality as far as hey, here comes a curveball. How do you handle it? And on top of, playing a football game. But, I think those guys, they didn't get in to their hotel, I think, until like 12:30 last night. So it was a long day for them.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
And you're really not traveling all that far. Like, I mean, I get it's kind of a haul, but it's not like you're going from like LA to, Boston or something like that.
Sure.
It still sucks. What, if you've talked to some Auburn alumni, Auburn fans, feels like they're a little bit. Hugh Freeze isn't really off to a hot start. He's 7-8. Obviously, last week, Peyton Thorne, their quarterback, threw 4 interceptions. Jacob and I had the over, so it looked good. Like in the first 6 minutes, all of a sudden, everybody looked like the '86 Bears. Cal looked like the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Auburn looked like the '86 Bears. What have you gotten in a sense in the time that you've been there, and if you've talked to anybody, what their perception of this 2024 Auburn Tiger team is?
I think probably the biggest thing I've noticed is probably just a sense of frustration. I guess particularly at the quarterback position. I feel bad for Peyton because it sounds like, he was a guy that, Coach Freeze brought over with, brought in, and then even like with the backup quarterback that's going to be starting, I think he was actually committed to go, to Liberty with Hugh Freeze and then came over with them. So, but yeah, the biggest thing I've noticed frustration, and even talking to some of the fans like, hey, this could be, an interesting game because, we've already gotten the reference from last year when, NMSU came in and beat them. So I don't know if it's one of those senses where it's like, hey, hopefully it doesn't happen twice. So, but because that's the other thing too, especially with the weather tonight. I mean, I don't know if in a way it kind of helps us out, with the run game. I don't, and the fact that you got a backup quarterback now coming in whose only real game experience, I think, was a little bit in the bowl game last year. And so that kind of throws, different aspects of it into it. Does that take pressure off of him? So he just basically hands the ball off because it's going to be raining and, you got a slick field. So a lot of variables to this game now. So it's like, I don't know how to feel about it.
Well, it's a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon for me because that Hank Brown was against Maryland and Mike Loxley. I covered Mike Loxley. Oregon beat Auburn in the 2010 national championship game with Cam Newton. And I'm ending it there. Hank Brown, though, through playing New Mexico should offer Brown a chance to build blah, blah, blah. Thorne complete. Okay. This is Barrett Saleh I hope I pronounced his name right. He's a reporter on CBS. I don't know if he said this or he got the quote, but he said Peyton Thorne is the highest performer in practice and preparation, which obviously has led to us. I think it's Hugh Freeze. It's Barrett Saleh and it's Hugh Freeze. He reported it, but Peyton Thorne, quote, Peyton Thorne, the highest performer in practice and preparation, which obviously has led us to giving him the starting nod, but that's got to carry over into the game. I think if it was John Wooden who spoke directly about this, honoring the practice, but sometimes adjustments have to be made. Mm-hmm. And I promise you we're prepared. If that continues, we have another direction. So I think that was Hugh Freeze on Peyton Thorne. I mean, I'm asking probably a question I already know the answer to, but you've got a little bit more insight. Did you hear, was Bronco Mendenhall and the defense, were they preparing for Peyton Thorne, or were they maybe like, hey, this Hank Brown kid might come in? Were they preparing for both? Do you have an answer for that?
I would say probably a little bit of both. I mean, I know with, coaching stuff, I mean, you hear stuff all the time. I mean, yes, you try to block out the media, but sometimes you still got one eye on it at the same time. So I would imagine that they were probably anticipating for Peyton to start, but at the same time too, you're also going to prepare for your backup. That was actually something that we always did with Coach Long, and I can't imagine Coach Mendenhall would be any different. So, for us, it was always, okay, what's on that 2 deep roster and how are we going to game plan for it? So I'm kind of pretty much speculating at this point, but I think these guys are probably going to be prepared for both quarterbacks.
I'm trying to think of the places you'd have to remind me where you play. I think you were at Missouri, right? Maybe gone to Texas Tech. Yeah. I don't know if you've been on campus yet and in what you said, Montgomery, but this environment tonight, regardless of the fact that they're 1-1, has to be completely hostile. And I mean, they've already been at Arizona. They were at Texas A&M last year. Did you go to the Texas A&M game, Ben?
Yeah, that place is phenomenal. That's probably one of, if not the top environment that I've seen. Just based off the stadium itself and then the crowd, it was impressive. Yeah, I mean,
excuse me.
The other one I can think of is like Ohio State. Excuse me. Living up there. Yeah.
Excuse me as I sip my coffee, but what I was going to ask you was, I mean, you said Texas A&M and Ohio State, I guess. I mean, have you ever been to an SEC game before?
No, not before until the LSU game. So the LSU was actually my first SEC game, and that was a lot of fun itself too. I mean, it was harder than piss out, but that's the thing. It's like it's nuts to see, like someone put in perspective for that game, because you have like 90 plus for the LSU game, or even A&M too. It's like you can literally stack 2 UNM stadiums and then add a half another one, and then that's your crowd. I'm like, that's just mind-boggling to me, But, I think, especially with these players, though, when they come to this environment, I think it elevates things a little bit, get that excitement going because, I mean, I know you guys talked earlier at home. It's like, what do we get? 15,000, So I think these guys, definitely circle this game on the calendar as far as like, hey, here's a good opportunity to go into, what some would say, real college football, or SEC country and, Big Ten, stuff like that. So.
It's the NFL minor leagues. Jacob, do you have
Exactly.
a question for Ben?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't really have specifically a question for Ben, but something that I was gonna state here for going into this game, and there's been a lot of talk of dumbing down the playbook, and now they're trying out a backup quarterback here. I just think that this game, when you start looking at it from this perspective, it kind of gives you a little bit of hope for this game, because there's a lot of mitigating factors going into this, where it's like, okay, we're not going to show our full playbook because we start SEC play next week. We're starting a new quarterback. They don't really potentially have a lot of groove together on an offensive side. If we look at their offense last week against a Cal defense that's not the greatest, it kind of gives you a little bit of hope for this game. And maybe that they're taking UNM a little lightly, because that's bulletin board material for players. At least, I know Ben played football. I played football. You hear, oh yeah, we're really gonna, vanilla up our offense, and we're really going to do this, and then we're going to start a shirt freshman quarterback against you guys and all this stuff. And it just kind of shows a little bit of disrespect, right? So I think that we're getting that in this game. And if they're not careful, and UNM hops out on them, or, gets up on them, the flashbacks of last year are going to start with New Mexico State. And, whether you say that as a player or not, as a fan or not, you don't necessarily see that, but as a player, you start thinking about that kind of stuff. And, I think that could really play into this game. And, we talked about the weather too. That's going to be a factor. It may not make them as dynamic as they we expect them to be, because of the weather and whatnot. So I think this game is interesting. And I think that if Auburn continues to take that approach, they could run into a little bit of a surprise here coming out of the gates. So I'm excited for it. And I know Ben, you probably know that as a player and whatnot, but I guess Ryan was looking for a question. But when you hear those types of things, right? Vanilla offense, all that kind of stuff, it adds motivation, correct? From a player's perspective going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you brought up the whole dumbing down the playbook comment, because I believe we touched on it on Tuesday. And, for me, like, when I hear that, it's one of those where, if you're dumbing down the playbook, does that mean you're bringing in someone else in at quarterback? Because you don't have to dumb down a playbook for a 2-year starter. You know what I mean? The guy's already, in his 5th year of playing football. So it's like, why would you make that comment of dumbing down a playbook? I mean, this is just how I interpret it. But yeah, you're right too, because now you got a situation, you got a quarterback who doesn't have hardly any game experience other than a bowl game last year. And I think you bring up a great point as far as even with the weather too. I mean, that could totally change, the pace of a game, or how you aim, or even just, the playbook of a game, where I think that benefits us quite a bit, as far as, I think we have a pretty solid O-line. We got a stable of running backs who could definitely get the job done. And even like with our passing game, I mean, when you guys got guys like Luke and, Ryan Davis, who are really good at the short to intermediate game to pick up yards. I mean, it doesn't have to be a first down every time, but if you can pick up at least a solid 5 yards every play, I mean, hey, being at 2nd and 5 is a whole hell of a lot better than being, 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 10. So I think it's going to be, I'm curious to see how much the Auburn offense changes going from Peyton to Hank, because watching the last game against Cal, I mean, Peyton, he can run the ball pretty good. I mean, he's got some legs on him. So I haven't seen much on Hank as far as how he runs the ball. From what I looking just at his past stats, like even going all the way back to high school, sounds like he's kind of more of like a, sit back and throw kind of guy. So it's going to be, for me, I'm looking at how much then is the defense going to pressure this guy, or are they going to, sit back and go more into a zone or even zone or man-to-man coverage. But those are all great points though. So it's like I said, this is like a total like chess game now at this point, with, all the outside factors, coming into now with, a change at quarterback. especially when you're finding out the day before the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, like you come off of a game where you're so bad offensively. You know what I mean? And now you're going to dummy down your playbook and change all these things on offense. And you didn't really look, intuitive on the offensive side of the ball last week. I mean, obviously their first game of the season, they put up 70. They played, I think, Alabama, A&M, whatever. That's
right.
You can't read too much into that.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it from my perspective, you can't really expect them to come out and look great on offense because, I mean, we saw it last week. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, that's been the weakness of the UNM team so far is the defense. We all know that they're giving up a lot of points, but there's a lot of factors in this game where they didn't look good on offense last week, and now they're going to start a quarterback that may not be getting the first team reps and whatever the. I mean, I think it gives the opportunity for UNM to stick around in this game, and if you stick around in a game long enough, and that belief starts to come up, I mean, even against Arizona, they didn't seem phased. Like when Arizona was scoring, they punch them right back. I don't know. I think the second half adjustments might have got them in that game. But as long as you stay around, you've got a chance. And so I think this game gets interesting today. I really do.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I look at it, especially from the defense standpoint, knowing that you're going against a backup quarterback who has very minimal game experience, and he's, I think a redshirt freshman. I mean, that's blood in the water for a defense. You know what I'm saying? So, this is a good opportunity for them to capitalize on that. And you're right. I mean, I think with the offense right now, I mean, those guys are playing with some pretty good confidence too. I mean, just talking with the boys, it sounds like, they can move the ball on anybody, is their belief. It doesn't matter who they got lined up in front of them. I mean, we're going to punch in the mouth, either running the ball or we're going to send it over your head. It doesn't matter. So, and I think a lot of that starts with Devin. Devin is playing at a pretty confident level. And, when you got a quarterback who's got, a ton of confidence like he does compared to, like, say, Auburn with Peyton, I don't know what his confidence level is, especially now that he's on the bench. That does a lot to a player mentally. So I think, like I said, this is a great chance for UNM to come out and really, pretty much set the tone and, give these guys a good game. And hopefully we can, shock the world and come out with a W.
Ryan, I got one more question for Ben too.
Oh no, we got to.
How this is something that I've seen from a fan, from a person that played football, from the way that UNM has ran offense over the last 10 years with that, very run heavy offense, option type of offense. How much do you think it's helped implementing like a pro style offense now moving forward? They're spread, they're not a pro style offense, but a balanced offense, actually having a threat to pass the ball, having a dual threat quarterback that can run it. How much do you think that that's helped, because that's been a frustration of mine as a fan for the last, 10 years is it's very easy to prep for a running style game, right? But when you have to prep for both sides of the spectrum on offense, do you think that that's been a little bit of the involvement of how this offense has evolved so far over just the first two games of this season is implementing a more balanced style of offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, especially looking at it from a defensive standpoint too, it makes it a little bit more challenging now because now you have more weapons that you got to consider now. And, especially with our offense, when you've got, some speed guys like Luke and, and then the running backs, I mean, those guys, you get them in open space and they can, burn you. But, yeah, it definitely makes things tougher. And, from a fan standpoint, I think it makes it more exciting. I mean, I just remember when we were playing, that was always the joke. Like, when we played against Air Force, it's like, cool. So we're going to go against the option. Like that's, option or, belly option, whatever it was, and maybe they'll throw the ball 5 times, which, from a fan standpoint, it kind of gets boring after a while. Like, I look at it like, back when it was like Army and Navy playing each other and you're like, okay, I love like, the pageantry and everything of the game. But when you sat and watched the game, you're like, okay, like here comes the option. Which one runs it better? So, but I think it definitely opens up more options though, too, by running like a balanced, it opens up options as far as play calling, because it makes it from a scheme standpoint, in my opinion, harder to defend, especially too. And then like Coach Brendan Hall brought up during the week where, he would like to get maybe 2 or 3 more guys, to, start producing, on top of like guys like, Luke and Devin. but it definitely makes it more challenging. I just think too, it makes it for more exciting football. And plus too, the other thing, like think about it now, I think it gets all the players excited because in a sense that they now have an opportunity to possibly get the ball, instead of the same 2 to 3 guys a game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really hard to bring talented wide receivers and talented quarterbacks in when you're running the ball 24/7. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that plays all into it. That was the question that I had for Ben is, after we talked about that. But Ryan, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, Ben, what have you made about the 4 teams leaving for the Pac-12? Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State.
I mean, I'm kind of not surprised. I mean, especially with the fact that you still have Washington State and Oregon State just not being able to let go of it. I think a little bit of the factor too is because since the Pac conference in general has been around for so long, I don't know if it's just like we got to keep it alive, and it's our West Coast off conference in a sense. But I'm a little split by it. I've loved the Mountain West, so hopefully UNM, if they want to go to the Pac-12, they have that opportunity to do so. But at the same time too, and I think it was actually a Boise fan, and I retweeted it where, he basically called out UNM fans, like saying, hey, if you guys, the way I read it is like, hey, if you want to be in a big boy conference, you better start putting on your big boy pants and showing up to the game. So it's like, okay, well, that's easier said than done. But at the same time, I mean, he kind of has a point.
He's right, though.
He's absolutely right. I mean, if I'm the Pac-12 conference looking down, like, why would I want to bring on a team that's only bringing 15,000 fans to a football game? I mean, yes, we can make the argument. Yeah, the men's basketball team. Yeah, I mean, they're awesome. I love going to their games, but I think from a fan standpoint, I mean, we got to, do our part. We got to kind of do some proving to be able to show that, hey, we belong in a sense. So I am a little thrown off by the CSU one, but I don't know. Like, I think, he brought it up earlier. Eric brought it up as far as, with the market and, and things like that. And they got a brand new stadium and, so I think there was a lot of like dressing on top of that, but we'll see. And like the comment just now, from Brown Sugar, I mean, it is a great opportunity, to get in the stands if we can pull out a win or even, just, hang all 4 quarters with these guys. So, which I think we can. I think this team has a lot of potential. And I think if the fans can just give these guys a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, I think this team is going to start, making people believe. So,
what's interesting too, Ryan?
I was just Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what's interesting too is we've always thought as the Pac-12 is, or at least in my perspective, from all my college sports that I've watched, I've always thought of the Pac-12 as a basketball conference, right? And now all of a sudden, I think you're seeing a transformation from the Pac-12 turning to a college football conference, right? And so a lot of these conference alignments are being based off football. And as of right now, UNM is not in that category of bringing, a strong presence to a conference from a football perspective. So, the basketball comes with it, but America in American sport, football is key, you know what I mean? And so it's interesting to see that change. What was left of the Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State, not good basketball schools.
Right.
Now they're bringing in the football schools to make the Pac-12 a football conference. You know what I mean? So you're going to see a change in that as well, where we saw strong Pac-12 basketball schools. I mean, there was strong football schools as well, but when we looked at the Pac-12, we always thought of basketball. Now it looks like they're making that change to be more relevant in the football aspect. So could be why UNM was left out of that, of that.
Well, and you bring up the good point, because even like I said, when I was living in Ohio with, because, with the Ohio State, for example, during that time when I was out there, I mean, I remember Ohio State, they were, top 2-3 seeds, in the tournament, for a stretch there. But, even with as good as like what the Ohio State basketball team was at that time, I think it was with Coach Matt, was it Thad Matta? I think is when he was there. Mm-hmm. But even then, as good as those guys were, football was supreme. It didn't matter, and, you look at, even like Michigan, for example. Yes, you have the Fab Five, but anytime that I hear Michigan, I always think Michigan football. So it's one of those. I think you're right. I mean, football reigns supreme. Whether or not you got a good basketball team. And I know Ryan had mentioned earlier, yeah, like with UConn. When I was playing at UNM, I remember UConn. Those guys were tearing it up because it was at that time when you had like UConn, USF, and I think Cincinnati. Those guys were like top 5 in the nation at one point, and but that's the thing. It's if you have a combination of a good football and basketball program, I mean, the sky's the limit at that point. So I mean, your athletic department is just going to be booming, and then it just filters into other stuff, from the economic impact and things like that. So
I just want to read you something, Ben. This is Ohio State men's basketball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. NCAA tournament Final Four appearances. 1939, 1944, 45, 46, 60, 61. They won the tournament in 1960. 1962, 1968. The one when 99 was vacated. 2007, 2012. Their NCAA tournament runner-up 1939, 1961, 1962, and 2007. You have 2 college basketball junkies on the show. Mike Conley and Greg Oden were on that 2007 team, and they lost to Florida, who had Corey Brewer, Joakim Noah, Al Horford. I mean, you start thinking about that, and it's like, it blows your mind. And then I've had the pleasure of meeting Steve Fisher, who won a national title in 1989. They beat Seton Hall. I'm throwing it out there because it's New Jersey. Beat Seton Hall. And you get somebody like Dusty May, who's the head coach now. Sorry, I was Google something. NCAA tournament runner-up for Michigan men's basketball. They've been in the Final Four twice in the last 11 years. They were the national runner-up in 2013, 2018, and they were in the Elite Eight. I mean, not Thad Matta, but oh God, Jacob, who was their coach over the last decade?
Holtz, what's his name? Jesus, I can't think of his last name in total.
John Beeline.
Yes, there we go.
John Beeline. I couldn't think of it.
You're talking about Michigan. I thought you were talking about Ohio State. John Beeline.
No, not Ohio State. Yeah, no, I meant Michigan. But I'm just saying, you have 2 football schools like that, and for as much as we love UConn, I mean, I already know I'm repeating myself. For as much as you love, for as much as what UConn has just accomplished, it's like I listened to a show out of Waco called 365 Sports because they talk. It's like one of the few things that they really don't have the sense of humor, so I'm not attracted to it. But I listen to it because I love their insight on football and their college football talk.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is bar not like I'm in love with it. And Ben, I should send you the link one day. You'd probably love that show.
Do.
And they have college football. They have people on all the time. They mentioned Devin Dampier because they were talking about Tetaroa McMillan, but one of the guys stopped and he's like, you have to watch Devin Dampier. But anyway, I love that show because of the amount of college football talk. And they were talking about UConn joining the Big 12. And it's like, we respect, like, it's so weird to us that UConn would join the Big 12 because it's a basketball move and it might help their football program. But I mean, UConn football is just, again, you don't really think about it. I want to, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, especially with the UConn situation, I look at, not only just how does, men's basketball impact the football and vice versa, but you also then got to look at, like, how does the men's program impact the women's and vice versa? Because you got a women's team over there, too, that is just absolutely destroying people, them in South Carolina. So it's, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can get down into. But, it's stuff you got to consider.
I know that we are probably all chomping at the bit to watch some college football. So Ben, I'll start with Jacob here, and then I'll go to you, Ben. And again, thanks for joining us. It's Ben Wysong, who's a part of this. You are part of the wannabe It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia gang. Now we appreciate your time. And you're in Greenbow, Alabama. Jacob, the line is now the line is now 26.5. So it looks like money is looks like it is. Money's coming in on UNM. The over-under is now 58.5. It opened up at 28.5, so the sharps or the bettors are looking at Auburn and saying, hey, you guys kind of suck. Jacob, I want your betting advice for this, and I'll try to share the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think we went over a little bit earlier when, I was talking to Ben about, the playbook, the changes on offense. I mean, you have to look at this game, and New Mexico's 2-0 against the spread so far this year. They haven't won a game, but they're competitive. And they've, I think going into a school like Arizona, playing in a decent environment is going to help them. I don't think they're going to be overwhelmed by this. That kind of was a good prep game for an SEC or an SEC road game. And yeah, as you said, the sharps are looking at this game, and I mean, how would you not take UNM at plus 28.5 when it opened? Because you're getting over 4 touchdowns, and you've got a lot of unknowns at quarterback. You've got some turmoil on the team from what it seems like. They're already doubting Thorne 2 games into it. He didn't look great in the bowl game last year. I think Hugh Freeze is looking for a spark in some sense, but when you're looking for a spark on offense, it goes one or two ways. Either it really works out or you struggle and it doesn't come away. And for the first game, him coming into this, I just don't see how you don't take the plus 26.5 in this game. I'm not a homer or anything like that, but you've got a team that's sticking around in games right now. They're showing the ability to put up points. Auburn struggling on offense. Now we know that that's UNM's weakness as of right now is the defensive side of the ball, but maybe this equals it out a little bit, having troubles with offense and UNM having trouble with defense. Maybe UNM's defense can keep them, get a couple of stops. I mean, realistically, when you're looking at a 26.5 point spread, you only need 2 or 3 stops during the game to cover that spread. I mean, unless they're scoring every drive and UNM is putting up points and you lose like 62-20 in that case, they're going to cover the spread, obviously, if they're putting up that many. But I don't know if Auburn's defense is going to be able to keep UNM. I think if UNM gets to about 17 or 21 in this game, there's no way that they don't cover the number. So for me, I think it's UNM taking the points even at 26.5. Obviously, you would have liked to have gotten it when it opened at 28.5. But I would be on UNM at getting 26.5 points today.
Yeah.
Totally butchering the screen here. Well, we'll go to you, Ben. What is your thoughts for this game?
Yeah, I think Jacob's right. I mean, for me, I'm looking at it, how can you not go, with the plus, with UNM on this one? And the other thing I'm looking at too, like you have on the bottom of the screen, I mean, the weather factor of this now too, it's like, when you get, especially they say it's supposed to pour here later on this afternoon and then, lighten up during the game. It's like, what kind of football are you going to get now? Are you going to get some sloppy football? And I mean, usually in my experience, when you get, sloppy football like that, you're not going to get as many points, because you're kind of limiting, offense in some ways. So, for me on something like that, I would probably take the under on this one just simply because, with the weather factor with it. But I could obviously totally be wrong, and they both put up like 40 points. I don't know, but it's usually history tends. So when you got sloppy football, you're not really in the end zone as much.
No, that I agree with that. It's very funny. We took Northwestern State plus 38 the other night.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, we're just going to get a stop.
Yeah.
And they shortened that third quarter to 6 minutes. So they didn't play a full 60. It was crazy because
that's wild.
The coaches are doing that. It's fucking wild. He's a former linebacker and a Lobo back for the University of New Mexico. And of course, his 2 nephews play on the team right now. He's coming to you live from Greenbow, Alabama. I'm sure there's somebody listening from Auburn. They're probably like, these guys suck. Ben Weisong, Ben, we really appreciate your time. I hope you enjoy that atmosphere tonight.
Yeah. Thank you guys. No, thank you for having me on. And hopefully we can come out with a big win tonight and it'll be a good time.
We will safe travels back. We'll talk to you on Tuesday or Wednesday. That's Ben Weisong.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Go Lobos.
You, Ben.
Appreciate Ben Wysong joining us, taking out of time on his trip in Auburn. I just want to wrap it up here with a couple of the comments I saw. There you go. Gee, God, look at that picture. We know him. Geez, there it is. There's his hair. Rick Thompson. Rick had to drop the show. He had to take his daughter to ballet. But basketball could survive in a diminished conference if all the money and effort went and established an elite status at Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Or St. Mary's. I believe that's true. If they were to redo again, Brett Newberry was posting, that's not that comment, but I already read this. He made the comment on that they need, I've said it, they just need to completely wipe everything clean. But where do you get the money? And how much does New Mexico State alumni bitch? Because it is not fair to them. But where does UNM play if they're rebuilding a stadium that nobody goes to? So what's the point? I don't think Isotopes Park or Wilson, and as crazy as it sounds, community stadium, I think would be a better fit for UNM football than probably Wilson or Isotopes Park. I mean, there's a lot of beef between the Isotopes and United. So there you go. Appreciate everybody watching today. Rick Thompson, Eric Moulton. You can check out, I think, maybe you'll get Jacob and I to tweet out our bets, even though some of the games have started. My lock, South Carolina's up 7-0. So there we go. For Hootie. Hey, we will come to you live on Tuesday night with an episode of the Pit Press Live. And then Wednesday this week. Again, we didn't go live this past Tuesday because of the presidential debate. So, Jake, appreciate it. Enjoy your full slate of football this weekend, today and tomorrow.
You too, brother. Have fun this weekend, and hopefully the Lobos pull one off. That would be amazing for this program.
It would be nice to talk about. I am going to a diaper party, and it's going to be a shit show. Everybody have a safe and happy weekend. We will talk to you on Tuesday.
Join us for the annual Walk and Wheel on Sunday, September 22nd to end ALS. We've high-fived thousands of participants, raised millions of dollars, and impacted hundreds of families. With your help, the good keeps growing. Register at walkandwheelnm.org. See you there.
Our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mental.
The details themselves, with the right preparation, can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.